The woman sits in silence, her eyes fixed on the window where the morning light touches her face. She remembers the nights when she hid her bruises beneath long sleeves, and smiles that were never real. She remembers the sound of the door slamming, the echo of fear that lived inside her chest, and the voice that told her she was nothing. She believed it once, she believed it so deeply that she forgot the sound of her own name. She forgot what freedom felt like. She forgot how it felt to breathe without trembling. But somewhere inside her a small voice refused to die, a whisper that said, you deserve more than this, you deserve peace, you deserve love, you deserve life. She held on to that whisper like a fragile thread. It was all she had when the nights were long and the walls seemed to close in around her. She learned how to cry silently so the children wouldn't wake. She learned how to hide her pain in the rhythm of daily chores and quiet smiles. One morning she looked at herself in the mirror and saw not the scars, but the strength beneath them. She saw eyes that had survived storms and a heart that refused to break. That morning she decided it was time to leave. She packed a small bag filled with clothes, a photograph of her children, and the courage she had been gathering in secret for years. She waited until the house was still, until the world was quiet. Then she opened the door and stepped into the unknown. The cold air bit her skin, but it felt like freedom. She walked down the road, her heart beat loud in her chest, every step a promise to herself. She had no plan, no money, no place to go. But she had hope, and hope was enough. She found a small shelter at the edge of town. The nights were still hard, the memories didn't fade easily. She woke up sometimes to the ghost of his voice calling her name. She would sit in the dark and remind herself he was not there anymore. She was free. She would breathe until the fear loosened its grip, and she could see the dawn through the window. She started to write small notes to herself on pieces of paper, words like brave, strong enough, survivor. She taped them to the mirror so she could see them every morning until she began to believe them. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months. She found work at a small diner where she washed dishes and served coffee. The pay was little, but it was honest, and every coin she earned was a step toward rebuilding her life. She met other women there, each with their own story, each carrying invisible wounds, but together they laughed, they healed. She learned that healing wasn't about forgetting, it was about forgiving herself for staying so long and loving herself for finally leaving. She saved enough to rent a small apartment, just one room, with peeling paint and a window that opened to the street below. But it was hers, her own space, her own life. She bought flowers for the windowsill. She played music in the evenings and danced barefoot on the old wooden floor. She called her children and promised them she would bring them home soon. She cried after each call, but they were tears of strength, not sorrow. Years passed. She studied at night, took classes in social work, and volunteered at the same shelter that once took her in. She listened to stories like her own, stories of pain and survival, and she would hold their hands and say, I know I have been there, but you can rise, too, you can start again. She became a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. She told her story at community centers, on radio shows, in small gatherings, her voice shaking. As years went by, she helped build a foundation that offered shelter and counseling to women escaping violence. She traveled across the country sharing stories of hope and survival. She met leaders, activists, and survivors who became her family. Together they built a network of support, a chain of voices saying no more silence, no more pain, no more hiding. Each voice adding strength to the movement, each story a spark lighting the path for others. She never forgot where she came from. She visited the old street once, stood outside the house she once called home. It was quiet, the walls still standing, but it no longer held power over her. She placed a small flower by the door, whispered a prayer for every woman still trapped inside fear, then turned away with her head high, her heart steady. She walked back into her new life. Every night before sleeping she wrote in her journal, today I lived free, today I helped someone see their worth, today I was brave. She filled pages with gratitude, with lessons learned, with promises to never go back, to never forget her journey, and to always speak her truth. There were still moments of doubt, still echoes of the past that tried to haunt her, but she met them with strength. She had learned that bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's walking through it anyway. She had learned that love begins within, that no one could take away her light again. She had learned that freedom is not a destination, but a daily choice. She grew older, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes gentle but fierce. She watched her children grow into kind and fearless adults. Her daughter once asked, "Mom, how did you do it? How did you survive?" And that became her legacy, a story not of suffering, but of rising, not of brokenness, but of rebuilding, a story that reminded others that even in the darkest nights, the smallest spark of courage can become a fire that lights the whole world. She became that fire. She became the proof that a woman once silenced can become the voice that changes lives. The woman who escaped the cage of fear became the wings of freedom. For others, her story traveled beyond towns, beyond borders, whispered in shelters, told in classrooms, shared in videos, watched by millions, each listener finding a piece of themselves in her courage, each heart touched by her truth. And somewhere tonight another woman sits by a window, her eyes wet, her heart trembling. She listens to that story. She hears the voice that says, "You deserve peace, you deserve love, you deserve life." And in that moment, she decides to stand, she decides to leave, she decides to live. Because one woman long ago had the courage to tell her story and light the path for her. And the cycle continues, courage passed from one heart to another, one story to the next, until the world itself begins to heal and the silence is finally broken forever.